Assalamu alaikum. This is the third time that I'm recording this lecture. It's amazing. I don't know what has been happening. Anyhow, so we finished talking about carbohydrates. We'll talk about lipids now. Okay, so what are lipids? They belong to a heterogeneous class, okay, of organic molecules. Now the thing is that it's not like nucleic acids are made of monomers, nucleotides connected to each other. Proteins are made of amino acids also linked covalently to each other. Sugar molecules, glycogen, starch, cellulose, they are made of, even glycosaminoglycans, they are made of repetitive units, whether monosaccharides as in glycogen and starch, or repetitive disaccharides as in glycosaminoglycans. So these molecules are polymers. Lipids are not, but they are macromolecules. Okay, so they are large molecules in general. So they are amphipathic in nature. Now, amphi is not amphi, it's not your nose. Amphi means dual, it means both. So it has two natures, a hydrophobic nature and a hydrophilic nature. So basically the idea is that you can draw a line and say this part is hydrophobic, this part is hydrophilic. Now in general, so they are hydrophobic. As a result, they are insoluble in water, they are soluble in fat or organic solvents, okay, and they are widely distributed. So there are different ways of classifying lipids. We have simple lipids such as waxes, fats and oils, and we can also classify them as complex lipids, large lipid molecules, such as phospholipids, glycolipids, sulfolipids, lipoproteins. Also, what's not shown here is sphingolipids as well. We have derived lipids such as fatty acids and alcohols, and we have other types of lipids that we will not talk about. What's not shown in here as well is steroids. Steroids are a class of lipids that are all derived from cholesterol. So they have different functions. We can also classify them as storage lipids, meaning that they are used for energy purposes. Okay, just like glycogen in animals and in humans, and starch in plants. And we have structural lipids. These are the ones that make up membranes, plasma membranes, mitochondrial membranes, all types of membranes. Now, lipids can also be, they can function in signaling inside cells, such as the phosphatidylinositol. We'll talk about that briefly. They can also be cofactors, pigments, and so on. So, as storage lipids, they are the major source of energy in cells in our body. In fact, they can produce double the amount of energy compared to the same amount of carbohydrates. Now, so they provide a lot of energy. Okay. Now the thing is, so they are structural components in cell membranes. They make up. They are precursors of hormones and vitamins, and they are shock absorbers. Okay, so they insulate, or they contain, enclose our internal organs, protecting them, and they are thermal insulators as well. So they provide us with heat. So that's the idea, or that's the reason why if someone kicks you on the butt, you don't feel that much pain because of lipids. So the more lipids you have, the less pain you will feel. So let's start with fatty acids. Fatty acids are aliphatic monocarboxylic acids. So they are made of a hydrocarbon chain, just carbon and hydrogen, and there is at one end you have a carboxylic group. Okay, so they are known as fatty acids. Now, remember when I said that they are amphipathic molecules having dual natures? So the idea is that if you draw a line right here, you can say that this part of the molecule is hydrophilic and this part is hydrophobic. So they follow this chemical formula, and physiologically in our bodies, the length of carbons, the number of carbons, is between 12 and 24. The most abundant is 16 and 18 carbons. Okay, so these hydrocarbon chains can be all saturated, meaning that there are no double bonds whatsoever, or they can be saturated, meaning that they do not have any double bonds, or they can be unsaturated, meaning that they have at least one double bond. Now, there are no lipids with triple bonds, okay? Or even molecules in our cells, in our body. So, as I said, we have saturated lipids, we have saturated fatty acids, and we have unsaturated fatty acids. So, here's an example. Stearic acid. So, note the name, okay? That's stearic acid. It's an 18 carbon fatty acid, okay, with no double bonds. You start numbering from this carbon right here, the carboxyl group, okay? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Now here we have oleic acid. Now oleic acid has one double bond. So we say that it is a mono unsaturated fatty acid, meaning that it contains just one double bond. Now, oleic acid, by the way, is the same as olive oil. Now, we also have linoleic acid. That's an important one. So it is also an 18 carbon fatty acid with two double bonds. So we say that it is a polyunsaturated fatty acid because it has more than one double bond. Okay, so these are the classifications of lipids. So the thing is, if we look at these double bonds, they can take either one of two forms. They can have a trans configuration or a cis configuration. Cis means same. So they go into the same direction. So right here you have, that's a simple drawing of a double bond, and you have the two hydrogens, both hydrogens going upward. So they go in the same direction, so we say that this is a cis fatty acid. Now on top here we have a trans fatty acid. You have a double bond, and you have the hydrogens going in opposite directions. So we said that this is a trans fatty acid. Now this is a simple drawing. It doesn't really reflect what it looks like three-dimensionally. What we see here in the bottom right corner, you have sort of like a better illustration of how they look like in 3 dimensions. So right here you have a saturated fatty acid, okay, no double bonds whatsoever. Right here you have a mono unsaturated fatty acid with a double bond being a trans double bond. So basically you have the bond going down, up, then down, then up. Okay, so that's so the bonds are all going in opposite direction. Now this is a trans fatty acid. Okay, so you have the bond going up, down, down, up, down, down, down. Okay, so they go in the same direction and then they go zigzag again. Okay, note that the cis fatty acid takes up a little more space than a trans fatty acid, even though both of them have double bonds. So the question is, what is the relationship between double bonds and physical properties, specifically melting point? So also the question is, what is the relationship between the length of the hydrocarbon chain, that is how many carbon atoms does a fatty acid have, in relation to melting point? Melting point, that is when it starts to convert from a solid form to liquid and vice versa. vice versa, and opposite is true. So you look here, a 10 carbon fatty acid is in fact solid at a temperature of 30 and below, and it is liquid at 30 and above. Now note that the more carbons you add, the higher the melting point is. So a 20 carbon fatty acid at a temperature of about 70 is still solid, in a solid form. Now look at the double bonds, the effect of double bonds. So an 18 carbon fatty acid with no double bonds has the melting temperature of about 70, something like that. Introduction of just one double bond reduces the melting temperature to about 25. To about 15. Introduction of another one reduces the double bond, reduces the melting point as well. So the effect of double bond is really more significant than the length of a fatty acid or hydrocarbon chain. Now that makes sense in a way, right? Because here we have an 18 carbon fatty acid with one double bond. So what is this fatty acid? Oleic acid, right? The one that I just showed you. It makes sense because now if you have olive oil, it's in liquid form, right? But if you put it in the fridge or if you put it on the kitchen bench during winter time and it's cold, it solidifies, right? So that's what it is. So these are the different classes of saturated fatty acids, and these are their properties. So you have short chain fatty acids. They are liquid in nature. They are water soluble in general. And examples include, and they're volatile, meaning يعني بتطير. Okay. Like examples include acetic acid, الخل. Okay. It's CH3, C double bond O, right? A carboxyl group. Butyric acid, which makes up butter. Now, even though, so if you put butter at room temperature, it becomes liquid form. And that's why it melts really fast in your mouth when it warms up. And caproic fatty acid as well. Now, caproic acid, by the way, capri, or it means goat. So in goat milk, you have a lot of short chain fatty acids. Medium chain fatty acids, they are solid at room temperature. They are water soluble in general. Okay. Examples include caprylic and capric fatty acids. Now we have long chain fatty acids. In general, they are solid at room temperature. They are water insoluble, and examples include palmitic acid, okay, which is derived from palm tree, as well as stearic acid. So let's look at the numbers in Greek. So mono means one, right? Di means two. Tri means three. Tetra means four. Penta is five. Hexa is six. Hepta is seven. Octa is eight. Nona is nine. Deca is 10, and eco is 20. Okay, so how do we name fatty acids? So we convert the alkane to oic acid. So if I have an octadecane, meaning that we have octa is 8, deca is 10, that's an 18 carbon fatty acid. And we add a carboxyl group to it, then it becomes octadecanoic acid. Okay. If there is one double bond, note it becomes octadecy. So you convert A to E because now it's an alkene, decanoic acid. What if we have two double bonds? Then we call it octadecadi. Di means that we have two double bonds. Dienoic acid. Three double bonds, octadeca, three noic acid. Now we can also designate carbons and bonds as well. So we say 18:0, meaning that this is an 18 carbon fatty acid with no double bonds, like stearic acid. Palmitic acid is 16:0. Now, if I say 18 colon 2, it means that this is an 18 carbon fatty acid with 2 double bonds, linoleic acid. Someone can say, well, where are these double bonds located? So we can use the symbol right here, delta. So we say delta N. N stands for which carbon has the double bond. So if I say cis delta 9, it means that there is a cis double bond between carbons 9 and 10. If I say trans delta 2, it means that there is a trans double bond between carbons 2 and 3. So these are some of the most common fatty acids that we'll focus on. Oleic acid is 18 colon 1 with delta 9, so double bond between 9 and 10. Okay. Linoleic is 18 colon 2, delta 9 and 12. Now, linolenic, okay, so do not get these two fatty acids confused. Linoleic, okay, is 18,2. Linolenic, so there's an extra letter, linic, okay, there's an N in here, okay, so there's an extra double bond, so it's 3 instead of 2. That's how I memorize it, by the way. Okay, delta 9, 12, and 15. Arachidonic acid is a 20 carbon fatty acid with 4 double bonds, and pentanoic acid, eco, remember, is 20. Penta means 5, so 5 double bonds. Okay, so arachidonic acid, by the way, is the common name, not the scientific name, as well as linolenic, linoleic, and oleic acid. So there's another way of naming fatty acids, an easier way, which is by saying that, especially for those that contain double bonds, by saying this is an omega fatty acid, where omega means that this fatty acid has a double bond, and an indication, a number indicating where this double bond exists, except that we start counting from the other end, from the methyl group rather than from the carboxylic group. So here we have what we call an omega-3 fatty acid, because there is a double bond at carbon number 3 starting counting from the methyl group. So that's 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now these are examples of some other omega-3 fatty acids. Linolenic. Okay. This is an omega-3 fatty acid, 1, 2, 3. We talked about it before. Eicosapentanoic acid is an omega-3 fatty acid. Okay, docosa hexanoic acid. I feel Japanese. Docosa hexanoic acid. That's again an omega-3 fatty acid. So by saying this is an omega-3 fatty acid, we know that it contains a double bond at carbon number 3, starting counting from the methyl group. But okay, we don't know exactly if there are any other double bonds. Okay, so it doesn't give us a lot of information. Omega-6 fatty acids have double bonds at carbon number 6, starting counting from the methyl group. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, an example is linoleic acid. Okay, and arachidonic acid as well. Now, linoleic and linolenic fatty acids are essential fatty acids, meaning that we cannot synthesize them and we have to get them from diet. Okay, linoleic fatty acid is a precursor of arachidonic acid, and linolenic fatty acid is a precursor of EPA and DHA, these ones here. So again, these are designations of these fatty acids: oleic acid, linoleic, linolenic, arachidonic, and EPA, as well as docosahexaenoic acid. Now, we have a class of lipid molecules known as eicosanoids. Now remember, eco means 20. So these are all 20 carbon fatty acids, and that's an important class of fatty acids. They belong to arachidonic acid. So they are derived from arachidonic acid, a 20 carbon fatty acid. Now, arachidonic fatty acid is a precursor for other important eicosanoids, that is 20 carbon molecules, including leukotrienes, prostaglandins, prostacyclins, and thromboxanes. Now, leukotrienes, it came from leukocytes, okay, immune cells. Prostaglandins were given this name because they were first identified as molecules synthesized or found in prostate gland. Prostacyclins, same thing, they were found in the prostate gland and they were given this name. Thromboxanes are related to thrombin, which is a protein involved in blood clotting, thrombus. Okay, so all of these are enzymatically catalyzed, by the way. So arachidonic acid to leukotrienes, or arachidonate to other molecules. Now, these are really important molecules physiologically as well as pathologically as well. So prostaglandins induce inflammation and they inhibit platelet aggregation as well. Okay, so they inhibit blood clotting. Leukotrienes can constrict smooth muscles and they are associated with asthma. So as a mode of treatment um, for asthmatic individuals, they may be given inhibitors of production of leukotrienes. Thromboxanes can constrict smooth muscles. They induce platelet aggregation, so they can induce blood clotting. Prostacyclins are inhibitors of platelet aggregation, as well as it is a vasodilator, meaning that it expands blood vessels. Now note that their functions are or may be contradictory to each other one way or another, but there is an important concept in our body, and that is homeostasis, which means there is a physiological balance. So our body balances out our response to effectors. Now, here's an important point. So arachidonic acid can be converted to thromboxane or prostaglandins. Now, aspirin was found to inhibit the production of both of these mediators or signaling molecules. As a result, aspirin is an anti-inflammatory medication and it is antipyretic, meaning that it reduces fever, as well as it inhibits platelet aggregation. How does it do that? And that is why it was thought until last year only, it has been thought for years, or it had been thought for years, that aspirin is good for older people by reducing the incidence of heart attacks. Okay. For years, and companies made billions of dollars. Only last year there was a research article saying that this is not true, aspirin is not beneficial. Now, I don't know where the truth is, but we'll find out. Anyhow, so how does aspirin do that? By inhibiting the enzymes that convert arachidonic acid to these components, these molecules. And the enzymes are known as cyclooxygenase, and there are three isoforms. Specifically, we'll focus on two, cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2. So cyclooxygenase 1 converts arachidonic acid to thromboxanes, and cyclooxygenase 2 converts arachidonic acid to prostaglandins. So by inhibiting these two enzymes, you reduce inflammation, you reduce fever, and you can inhibit platelet aggregation, quote unquote, reducing heart attacks, the rate of heart attacks. It turns out that actually by inhibiting COX-1, there are undesirable effects that would appear. People with sensitive stomachs are not supposed to take aspirin, because it turns out that even though there is inhibition of platelet aggregation, there is an effect on the gastrointestinal tract, specifically our stomachs. So people thought, well, why don't we do a drug, a medication that would only inhibit COX-2? Okay, and that's the beauty of biochemistry. By understanding enzymes, their functions, their structures, we can design better drugs. And it turns out that this could happen. There was a drug called Celebrex, and the scientific name is celecoxib, okay, that would inhibit only COX-2 but not COX-1. So it does have no effects on our stomach, but it does its effect in reducing inflammation. So it is a good medication, except that it may have bad effects on people with heart problems. So that should be noted. So now these are the omega fatty acids, and that's their effects on our body. So we have omega-3 fatty acids. They include EPA and DHA. Okay, and they are derived from linolenic acid, the molecule with 3 double bonds. Now, omega-3 fatty acids can reduce inflammation by reducing conversion of arachidonic acid into eicosanoids and promoting synthesis of anti-inflammatory molecules. So it has some really good effects. It's also, I think it's good if you take omega-3 fatty acids, pills or nutrition that contains omega-3 fatty acids, because it's good for your memory. It's good for your health. Now, tuna and salmon are really great, and sardine, they're really great for omega-3 fatty acids. Now, omega-6 fatty acids include arachidonic acid, okay, as well as linoleic acid, except that their effects are not really that good because they stimulate platelet leukocyte activation, that is immune cells. They increase pain signaling, they induce bronchoconstriction, and they can regulate gastric secretion as well. So, and we have an omega-9 fatty acid. So when you go to the pharmacy, go to that shelf of supplements and look at omega-3, 6 fat and read the names. So an omega-9 fatty acid is oleic acid, which has been found to reduce cholesterol in our circulation. And that's why they say that Mediterranean food is good overall, because we use a lot of olive oil in our diet.